Welcome to a brand new episode of the Tech Your Business podcast, where we show you different ways where you can use technology to stay ahead of the game and ahead of your competitors. Today is another guest episode, another entrepreneur story. And for today's episode, we'll be talking with Bo Bennett. Bo has a really, really interesting history. He's done a lot of interesting projects. So I'm sure he's going to be able to share a lot that you'll be able to use in your business and a lot of you find interesting. So welcome to the show, Bo.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. So I think I left the introduction to you. So can you tell us a bit about your journey, how you got to this point today?
Yeah, sure. Well, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in marketing. That's an undergraduate degree in business and marketing back in 1994 because I really wanted to go into business. I really wanted to have a good income, make a lot of money. So after that, I started my own business right away. I never had a traditional job where I would work for a large company. That was never the case. I always worked for myself, always started my own companies, did my own thing, uh, many of which didn't really pan out to be much, but a few of which did extremely well. And that allowed me kind of the freedom to pursue more academic interests. So about 20 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, I started focusing more on critical thinking, logic, reasoning, thought pattern psychology, philosophy. And I eventually went back to school, got a, master's degree in psychology, general psychology, and a PhD in social psychology. So I write books now. I work, help people to think more critically. But at the same time, I also run businesses because I love doing both. I love business, I love technology, and I also love psychology, reason, and critical thinking. I've been doing all of those since then, and I plan to do those for the rest of my life.
That's interesting. So, bachelor's in marketing 94, a lot of businesses. Then the MSc. I think I stopped at the MSc. I have PTSD from an MSc I did, and I don't go back to school after
Right.
that. Yeah, but I think the story is actually really interesting because I too have had no job, but mine hasn't been as long as yours. I think I started my business around 14 years ago, so that's like 2010. So now looking at your profile, I see you've done a lot of internet-based business as against brick and mortar. So at what point did you decide that your focus is going to be on internet-based businesses in your career?
Well, it was actually very interesting because I started with a graphic design company, and this was back in '94. So if you, for your listeners, or if you, I'm not sure how old you are, but if you remember back in 1994, there essentially was no commercial internet. People didn't know about the internet. It existed in small corners of the world, but that's it. Um, and I was just running my graphic design with like local computers using Windows based systems. And we would have to send our designs that we did, we'd have to print them out. We'd have to go to a professional like printer, print them out, and then mail them overnight, which cost a lot of money to the clients. The clients would see it, sign it, send it back to us. It's just a major process. And a friend of mine told me about this thing called the internet. And he told me about like basically how it works. And the first thing I thought of is how amazing this would be to be able to put my designs on this internet thing and have somebody else see it. I kind of saw the internet back then as a color fax machine. That was it. And for those of you who don't know what a fax machine was, well, look it up. But it's basically a phone that has pictures. So I thought that's what my limitation of the internet was, like a color fax machine, and that was enough for me. I thought that was amazing. So I basically secluded myself to my bedroom and my office, where I would buy a bunch of books on the internet, what it was, how to program the internet using Perl language, how to create websites, web hosting, all of that. And I did that for about 6 months, and at which time I was ready to kind of get our business online. And then I realized how difficult it was. So what I did is I started a web hosting company, because there were essentially, I won't say there were no web hosting companies back in '95. This was about '95 when this happened, but the few that exists were very poor quality. They were
Mm.
very confusing. There was no like easy web based interfaces. So that's what I built.
Yeah.
I built one of those. One of the first ones where you could use a web based interface to kind of manage your website and create your website.
Mm.
And it ended up like exploding, um, metaphorically speaking, of course. And people wanted their own website, and so we just kind of sold the graphic design business, and we went full steam in web hosting and creating websites for people. And then that lasted until 2001 when I sold that business, and that was really what propelled me into the internet. And since that time, I've just been learning more and more and staying on top of the technology. So yeah, as of to answer your original question, as of 1990, late '94, early '95, that's when I started playing with the internet, and I never went back since.
Wow. I think in 94, what was I doing? I think I was probably watching cartoons and having no bills at all to bother about.
Oh, me too, but I was still doing computing.
Yeah, so okay, so that's actually an interesting story. I remember back then, back in the day, graphic, it used to be called desktop publishing or something like that, if I remember.
Yeah, yeah, desktop
Yeah,
publishing. That was a little bit
yeah.
different, but it was, along the same line.
Hmm. Okay, so I think you've had a long, long, long history with technology. Now, when you look at business owners using technology, how would you suggest that business owners should pick or choose what technology they should invest in for their businesses?
This question actually would change based on when you asked it. If you asked this a year ago, maybe a little bit more, you would have I would have given you a different answer. Because of AI,
Mhm.
technology changes so quickly, like so incredibly quickly. But I guess the foundation is the same. And the caveat here is be as flexible as possible, and try
Yeah.
not to get too deep into any one technology, because it could be replaced any day virtually. That's like the shorter end of the question. The more like the lengthier part of the answer would be that you should really look for technologies that have either like a track record, something that if you invest your time in, if you invest money in, that it will be around. It has good support. You're able to get help on it. You're able to look up information. And again, that changes a little bit too, because of with AI. AI knows a lot of technology and could really be kind of like your tech support guru when it comes to a technology that's well known. I'll give you an example, like JavaScript. JavaScript is
Mm.
something that when it first came out, I'm like, yeah, this sounds great. This solves so many problems. And I saw that it was kind of like the first out, and it was being adapted by the different web browser technologies. And I knew that it was going to be ubiquitous. So it was like a no brainer. It was a technology that I knew was going to be around for a long time. I should learn it. And now today in 2024, you could ask AI anything about JavaScript, and it could write the code for you. It could give you all the answers. It could explain things to you. So that's great when you have that kind of help from AI. Whereas if you went with a smaller technology, something that came out today, like, ooh, we got this new fancy shiny thing, it may look nice, but is it going to last? And most likely AI doesn't know about it if it comes from a small company. So that's where you have to kind of like balance the pros and the cons. And then there's also the question of open source versus private. And and I always had a problem with open source because of hackers. If you're
Mm.
like, it doesn't even matter if your company is a big one or anything. I mean, if you just use like WordPress, for example, like the most popular web based software out there, there are literally like probably I don't know, at least like tens of thousands of hackers and bots out there that know exactly how to exploit it and gain access to your server and cause like a nightmare. So when you're dealing with
Yeah.
open source, you have to deal with that. You got the pros, of course, of all the support and it being free, but you have the cons of it being incredibly vulnerable. The hackers are always one step ahead of the developers. Then the developers will fix the bug. So you got to stay on top of everything. So my approach has always been a sweet spot in the middle, and that's work with established technologies such as like programming. I love Perl programming,
Yeah.
HTML, obviously the not programming but hypertext markup language scripting, JavaScript, Ajax, and some of those technologies, Python. So these core technologies that aren't going anywhere, that are always going to be here, that are supported and developed by the server, using those to build my own platforms. Whereas I don't have the problem of open source, I don't have the problem of like hackers. Yet
Okay.
I've got that flexibility to be able to do essentially whatever I want, and the support, the historic support of these technologies. So that's always been my plan. And if I were to speak to a good friend or a family member who asked this question, that's what I would tell them: go in that direction, because it worked out well for me and it continues to.
Yeah, and I think I think that's one advice people need to take into cognizance when going with something like open source, because, like you said, everybody knows the code, everybody knows what's going on in the behind the engine and all that. So
Yeah.
you should really have a lot of technical support if you want to go down the open source route, and that ends up maybe sometimes cutting, negating the pricing advantage you might have had going with that. So I was looking through your profile and I see you're working with a couple of AI related projects. So can you tell us a bit about those? And you mentioned that too.
Yeah. So a couple of projects that I've been working on are within the publishing industry, and well, two within the publishing industry, one within language learning. I'll start with the publishing first because I've been doing publishing for about 14 years now. Not
Oh.
desktop publishing, but the book publishing. Because I wrote my first book in like after I sold my business, so I wrote that in about 2001. Came out, I think, like in 2002. It took me a full year to write it. And it was like a nightmare trying to get that thing published. So pretty much for the same reason I started the web hosting company, I decided to start an online publishing company for books, starting with ebooks, and then I expanded to print books, audiobooks. So I've been doing pretty much the same thing for a while. That's always been going in the background. But as of like a year and a half ago, when AI became mainstream, something drastically changed. I realized that I could use AI to like write book descriptions, to pick keywords, and it did a job better than I could ever do. Right. Because I can't possibly read all the books that we market, and and then write descriptions for them and pick the right keywords. But AI, you could upload the PDF document and it does an amazing job. So I used it for that purpose. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. If AI could do this, could it write the whole book? And the answer is yes. I mean, you can't tell like ChatGPT, write me a book. That's not going to work. But
Yeah.
through the APIs, through the scripting and working with it, and with the correct prompting, and walking authors through like step by step through a web-based interface, they could essentially write their own book, both fiction and nonfiction, and it turns out fantastic. And it does all, and AI does all the work for you pretty much. I mean, you kind of guide it, you tell it what to do, and it does it. So that's bookbud.ai. That's the company I started about a year ago, and that's doing very well. And then the other part of that is with audiobooks. I've been narrating audiobooks since I started writing, when I narrated my first audiobook. And if anybody has ever done narration before for an audiobook, let me tell you, it's extremely difficult. It's not like we're doing right now where we're talking.
Yeah.
And if I mess up, I could just go back, I could stutter or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, this is a casual conversation. With an audiobook, every word has to be perfect. Your dictation has to be perfect. I mean, it has to be really good. And like the emotion level, I mean, it's just very difficult to do. And that's why typically narrators get paid very well. And a narrator is more than just somebody who reads, they're sort of an actor as well, especially for fiction books. So I've been dealing with many narrators for a long time and narrating my own audiobooks, and the editing involved, I mean, it is a massive process that essentially makes the vast majority, and I'm talking like, if I were to guess, I would say maybe one out of every 300 audiobooks actually makes money if you have to pay somebody to narrate. If you do it yourself, then that changes the formula, because obviously there's no real expense involved. But when you pay somebody to do it, it's just not worth it. And then here comes AI with the ability to create human voices, like clone voices from samples of real humans that sound amazing, like indistinguishable from human voices, from real human conversations, human voices. So that was a huge milestone in audiobooks and in technology in general. So I created a company called authorvoices.ai that uses 11 Labs, one of the I think the best in the industry right now with for those kind of voices for narration. And I created the web-based interface that works strictly with authors for audiobooks. And geez, like being able to narrate an 8-hour audiobook in about 20 minutes and and having it sound great. It's not perfect.
Wow.
There's still some like idiosyncrasies with some of the words, and sometimes like AI doesn't quite know like certain expressions or how to say something. But with editing, you could actually fix those things. So that's another like exciting technology we've been working with. And then the third one I'll mention briefly is with language learning. I created a website called Science Based Learning to help me initially learn Spanish. That was the language I wanted to learn, and then I realized that having a PhD in psychology, there's a lot of learning involved in that, like learning about learning, I should say. So I understand a lot about like how the learning process and how it works and what techniques work extremely well and what works better. So I started that pre AI, and then as soon as AI came along, I changed it up a little bit to incorporate more AI, and I incorporate books in there as well. So it's just a really dynamic learning system using books, publishing, and artificial intelligence, a lot of technology, like all in encapsulated in this one site to help people learn as efficiently as possible and as fast as possible. So that's what I've been working on.
Amazing. So we have auto voices, we have science-based learning, we have bookboard. But looking at these AI projects, of recent, there's been a lot of controversy over writing books and making movies and co with AI because people talk of the copyright and things like that.
Mhm.
Then also you have where you have the characters, images, and the voice where people complain. I know there was a Hollywood strike or something like that recently
Right.
over that. So what are your thoughts on those controversies?
Well, I think there's a few aspects to this controversy, I guess. One is the fear of being replaced by AI. And this has been around for centuries. It's nothing new, the fear of being replaced by a technology or even something else. When it started with the farmers with machines, and then you have like the industrial revolution, and then you have like computers, and then you had the internet. I mean, jobs are always getting replaced. If you look back 10 years, 15, 20, whatever, you'll find a lot of jobs that no longer exist anymore. In fact, it was funny. Driving around my neighborhood, there was always this sign outside this one woman's house that said "word processing available." So she did word processing, and she had the sign up for like 10 years. And then like as of like 10 years
Wow.
ago, it disappeared. And I'm like, yeah, no, nobody wants a word processing anymore. I mean, that's just not a thing. But the point is that these technologies come and go, and the jobs come and go along with the technologies. And people cannot just be happy with not changing. You have to have that flexibility. You have to be able to change and adapt. And I think that like what are the strikes going on and people like being worried about I don't know all the details to be honest with that. I don't know like what they're actually complaining about. Like my view on like on the one hand, um, if like an actor or somebody wants to have like a contract with a studio, then that's one thing. You know, you have a contract and then you're gonna say, okay, you're gonna hire me for like whatever amount and I'm gonna do this work. Um, and then yeah, that's a contract. But I'm always kind of the free market type of idea where, well, if a technology comes along that could do something better than you can do it within 1/100th of the time and the price, why wouldn't I use that? Why, like if AI could write these amazing screenplays for movies better than any writer can, why wouldn't you use that? I mean, again, it's like slowing down progress because people don't want to lose their jobs. That doesn't sound like a good way forward to me. That doesn't sound like progress. And then on the other hand, I'm completely and totally sympathetic for people who invest their whole lives in learning a technology or learning an art form such as screenplay writing or whatever, and then having their job so quickly and easily replaced. Uh, and I tend to have more sympathy for low level jobs that are getting replaced, people who are doing whatever to feed their families. I don't have a lot of sympathy for uh, people living in multi-million dollar mansions in Hollywood who who aren't going to get the next role for $20 million or aren't going to get the voice acting job for $3 million that they plan to do for 2 hours. Yeah, no sympathy there. But so in terms of that level of controversy, that's kind of where I stand right now, and I could be easily persuaded. I honestly have never heard a good argument from the side of the people who are striking and whatever. And maybe if I did hear that argument, I'd be more sympathetic to it. But I just haven't.
Yeah. And I think one other thing I would like to add is one thing I tell people is that the size of the economy we have these days is related to the technological advances. Because I know back in the day, to program, you needed binary code or you needed punch cards to program. Just imagine creating all these things we use these days with
Yeah,
punch cards. How would we have done it?
yeah,
It would have been possible. So yeah, it makes so much possible that would have been otherwise impossible.
right.
So now let's talk about a bit about publishing again, self-publishing. What mistakes? You said you've run a publishing company. So what mistakes have you seen people make when they try to self-publish their own books?
Mistakes. Well, I think like overall, the first thing that comes to mind is they tend authors that is tend to have an overinflated idea of the success of their book, because when you write a book, it's really personal. You put like everything into it and you absolutely love it. Of course you do, right? And then what they also do is they tend to get feedback from friends and relatives. And of course your friends and relatives are going to tell you it's the best thing ever. I mean, they're doing it for you. They're doing it to make you feel good. So not getting an objective opinion of your book is a problem, and that's why reviews are so important, like unbiased reviews. You put your book up on Amazon and you tell people to read it. You send it to Goodreads or whatever, you get a bunch of people give it away in return for some reviews, or you use a professional reviewing service that that's a little bit more questionable because you're basically getting the opinion of one person. Yeah, they might be a professional, but you never know. I mean, you thinking back to Harry Potter, looking back at Harry Potter, that never did well starting out. And that was like found in a bookstore or something by some publisher and said, this thing's amazing. Like after so many people rejected it. So it's
Yeah.
not, that's why I like kind of like the feedback from the masses, because the masses, those are the people who are buying your book. It's not like just a, like, well, I guess a publisher could buy your book, but it's not just like one reviewer or editor. That's important. It's the opinion of everybody. So I think a big mistake people make again is overvaluing their book and not having like a really good, realistic opinion of what their book is. And I also think a second mistake that that new authors make when it comes to publishing is the idea that, related to the first idea, their first problem, is that if they put their book out there, then everybody's going to buy it. Like all they need to do is just get their book on Amazon. And look, I have an Amazon page. And if you search for something, you're going to find it. If you're, my book's about war. If you search for war, my book's going to come
Yeah.
up and you're going to find it. No, that's not how it works. Amazon has close to 1 billion books. How many ever they have? It's a crazy number. And if there's probably like millions of books on war, and the books that come up first are the books that sell the most. So you're stuck. It's this catch 22. Like, unless your book sells, it's not going to come up high in the search engines. And it's not going to come up high in the search engines unless it sells. So,
So,
what do you do? And that's the thing. You have to really do marketing and promotion of your book to kickstart it, to get it out there, to give it that organic growth. That's the goal. The goal isn't to keep on throwing money in like Amazon ads or Google ads or whatever, or Facebook ads, and having people buy your book based on how much you're spending in terms of promotion fees. So, for example, if you spend $1,000 and you get $1,000 back in sales, well, you're losing a lot of money because out of that sales, you're only getting a fraction of that anyway. That's not the goal. You're not going to make money that way. I've never seen, my whole 13 years of doing this, I've never seen a book where you could put $100 in and you could make $100 in profit back. It just doesn't work
yeah.
that way. The way it does work is you put $1,000 in, whatever, $100, and then that jump starts the process, and people will start to read it. They'll start sharing it with their friends. They'll start posting about it. And that's what's called organic growth. And that kind of snowballs. And then your book takes off. So you need to kind of like seed the market with as many readers as possible. And that's what the initial promotion is for. That's what you need to be looking at. Not like, how much money am I going to get back in from sales? The answer is not as much as you put in initially. But if your
Yeah.
book is one of those books that grows organically, that is, it's marketable and it's a good quality book, so those two main factors, then it will grow, and then you basically hit the financial jackpot with your book, and that's what we want to go for.
Okay, so I think making sure they get feedback from the buyers and not depending on the publisher for publisher's opinion or their opinions on the quality of the book, and making sure they actively market or at least give the book a jump start so it can go grow organically.
That's right.
So as we get to the end of this, is there anything that maybe we haven't talked about that you would like to share with the audience, that you would like to leave with the audience today of the Tech Your Business podcast?
Well, based on the name of your podcast, I assume that it has to do with technology and business, and that's what your
Yeah.
customers are interested in. And I think you asked some really good questions to begin with, and those were more along the lines of like the technology that you choose to incorporate in your business. Um, like, what's that decision process about? And I hope I covered that. I think that was a really good question because people could waste so much time focusing on the technology and not the business. So
Yes.
the thing I would like to leave your audience with is, remember that the technology is there to serve the business, not the other way around. Your business isn't there to exploit the technology, right? So you're doing this for business purposes to make money. That's what you should be focused on. The technology should be there to help you. It shouldn't be wasting your time. You shouldn't be spending tons of money on technology that where it doesn't give you the correct return on your investment. It's all about the business. So focus on the business.
Amazing advice. So, for the listeners who want to connect with you, you've had a very long career, almost as long as my life, and you have a lot of knowledge you can share. I know if we continue this, we can go for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and we won't be done with what you have to share. So, listeners who want to connect with you, probably they want to publish their own books, or they want to use one of your products, or maybe learn more from you. What's the best way they can reach you?
I have two websites. One is where you can find all my businesses and all the businesses that we talked about in this podcast and a lot more. Go to archieboy.com, ARCHIEBOY.com, and all my businesses are linked to the homepage there. And if you're interested in some of my books, I do wrote books about business, about success, personal development, and then the majority of them are on critical thinking, reason, psychology. You could find that at bobennett.com, BOBENNETT.com.
Okay, so archieboy.com, bobennett.com. Both of them will be on the screen as we are talking right now once this goes live, and also in the show notes for those on audio. So thank you so much, Bo, for coming on the Tech Your Business podcast. Thank you so much for coming to share with us your wisdom today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And for the listeners, I hope you got some value from this episode. Choosing technology for your business, publishing, self-publishing your books, using AI. We talked about all those things. So if you missed any of it, just go back and listen again. And if you learned anything and you know someone else that would benefit from what you've learned, please share this episode with them. Also, if you want to be the first person to know when we're out with brand new episodes of this podcast for your business, don't forget to follow, like, share, and subscribe wherever you're seeing us, wherever you're hearing us. So we have over 100 episodes. We bring out one episode a week. So you have a lot to listen to till we are back with the next episode next week. Till then, keep taking your business, and bye for now.